Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. Everybody, welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. Before we get started, I want to remind you of our favorite 501c3 that supports the law enforcement community, and that is the Overwatch Collective. The Overwatch Collective is a nonprofit and podcast funding therapy sessions at supporting mental health initiatives for our first responders, our veterans, and their families. Their motto is one more is one less, and I want you to think about that in the context of National Suicide Prevention Month, which is, of course, the month of September. One more individual that the Overwatch Collective is able to provide therapy services to is one less potential statistic. And we all know that in this profession, in the law enforcement profession, suicide is far too high of a risk. So if it's on your heart to do so, if you have the ability to do so, please check out the overwatchcollective.com, make a donation, buy some gear, support their mission the best that you can, because they are providing incredible services to our law enforcement community. Another company that's providing great services to our law enforcement community is Blue Badge Coffee Company. The mission of Blue Badge Coffee Company is to provide customers with the absolute best, highest quality premium coffee their money can buy. They also take a portion of each and every sale and donate it to law enforcement agencies around the United States to assist them in funding or maintaining peer support and wellness programs for their officers. These programs are crucial for the physical and mental well-being of hardworking officers in law enforcement agencies around the country. You can check them out. You can buy some gear. You can buy some coffee. You can make a donation if you want to over at bluebadgecoffee.com. Let me start you out with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died. The same thing happened to both. All right, now, we've talked about meditations a lot on this podcast. I talk about it in my book. Meditations was, of course, Marcus Aurelius's journal. He was writing to himself. So a lot of his perspective at the time in the 2nd century AD is perspective of the ancient world, because he was much closer to it than we were. So when he's talking about Alexander the Great, he's talking about, I think, about 500 years prior to his own reign as the Emperor of Rome. Alexander the Great had kind of united the Greek city-states, and he had been this incredible military mind, but he died very young. He died at like the age of 35. And the point that Marcus is making is to humble himself. You know, he's the Emperor of Rome. He's the leader of the known world at this time. What he's essentially saying is, look, when it's all said and done, whether you're the Emperor of Rome, like me, whether you're the military dictator and ruler that Alexander the Great was, or you're the guy taking care of his mules, we all end up dead in the same ground at the end of it. I'm going to give you some perspective on the ancient world. I love Egyptology. I took some courses in college on ancient Egypt, and it's hard for me sometimes to wrap my head around the numbers, because the pyramids, I haven't been to see the pyramids, but the pyramids were built so long ago that it's sometimes difficult for us to wrap our heads around it. Let me give you an example. The Fourth Dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Egypt, that's when the Great Pyramid was commissioned. It was commissioned by Pharaoh Khufu. It was built as a tomb. It was intended to house his mummified body, his treasures, et cetera, for the journey to the afterlife. And historians estimate that the project took at least 20 years to complete, and that it required the labor of about 20,000 full-time workers, supplemented by as many as 100,000 seasonal workers over 20 years. Think about how big of a construction project this was. But here's the thing that gets me. It was built between 2580 and 2560 BC, before the birth of Christ. Now, we here are in 2024. So we are closer in time to the birth of Jesus than Jesus was to the construction of the Great Pyramids. Think about that. Think about that. Think about how long ago that was. For 4,500 years ago, the Great Pyramids were built. That is insane. That is an insane amount of time to think about. We think about our lives, our average lifespan for what, like the adult, American male, white male in America is like 79 years, right? Like that's one lifetime. We're talking centuries. We're talking millennia. We're talking almost 5,000 years of history between where we are right now and those 100,000 seasonal workers and 20,000 full-time workers completing the Great Pyramid. So it's kind of ironic, right, that despite commissioning the decades-long construction of a building that literally stood for 39 centuries as the Earth's tallest man-made structure. Think about that. For 3,900 years, this was the tallest structure on Earth. 39 centuries, nothing was taller than the Great Pyramid on Earth. Man-made, that is. So it's ironic, right, that this thing that has endured for so long, that's still there today, that spent 39 centuries as literally the tallest thing on Earth that anyone had ever built. Despite all of this, we only know like a handful of very small fragmentary details about Pharaoh Khufu. We actually really know almost nothing about him. And we've never found his mummified remains either. They've been lost to history. Whether it was tomb raiders, who knows? 39 centuries is a long time for somebody to come and, make off with the treasures and the mummified remains. So it's all been lost to history. And just like Alexander the Great, who came around like 2,000 years after Khufu, and Marcus Aurelius, who came around 500 years after that, and thousands of kings and conquerors who have existed in the 39 centuries in between, Pharaoh Khufu ended up in the same dirt that the rest of us will, albeit, possibly delayed. Maybe who knows where the body is now, but it's gone. It's gone. That's the point, right? So in the same manner of all the attendants, of all the laborers, of the hundreds of thousands of seasonal workers, of the tens of thousands of full-time workers, of the courtesans that served him, they all ended up in the same place too. And the same fate awaits all of us, whether we're a king, a commoner, a pharaoh, an emperor, a president. It doesn't matter, right? Now, fortunately, through circumstances of birth, though the circumstances of birth may not have provided us with the means or the authority to conquer the known world or erect monuments to our own supposed greatness, right? Like none of us are building the next Great Pyramid. I don't know. Maybe someone is, but it's unlikely, right? Circumstances of our birth doesn't land most of us in the position to be a Pharaoh Khufu. But we do have the opportunity to live in accordance with virtue and with reason while we're here. And I think that's the point that Marcus was making, is that, look, we're all going to end up in the same place. It's how you live that matters. It's not what happens after you're gone, because after you're gone, after you shuffle off this mortal coil, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, we're all going to the same place, right? Death is the great equalizer, in other words. And despite our vastly different lived experiences, whether we're Pharaoh Khufu or Emperor Marcus Aurelius or Chris the podcaster, we all share a common destiny. And so what truly matters isn't the monuments that we build. It's not the fact that something that we constructed might last for 39 centuries, but how we build the lives that we live, how we construct our lives, the values we uphold, and the impact we have on those around us, because those things are tangible and real and can last a lot longer than the flesh and bones that hold us. So that's what truly endures. And I think that's what I want to leave y'all with, is that your legacy, who you are, what you are, is what truly endures and is what truly matters. We're all going to end up in the same space, whether you have a great pyramid built to you or not, whether you're the commoner or the king. Death is the great equalizer. So live a virtuous life. Build something that truly matters. Well, you can. Get out your Big Chief notebook. I want you to ask yourself this question: what legacy will my current actions leave behind when I am gone? What legacy am I leaving? Now, keep in mind, an inheritance is what you leave for people. A legacy is what you leave in people. Your legacy, it's going to be borne out in the children that you raise and the children they raise, and on and on and on. Your legacy might last more than 39 centuries if you do it right. It might last longer than those great pyramids if you do it right. It'll last in your bloodline, is what I'm saying, a long time after you're gone. So write that down. Think on that today. There's a few ways that you can support this podcast if you choose to do so. Number one, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called In Valor 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Walmart, anywhere you get your books. It's available on Kindle or Nook for instant download, or you can get the paperback edition. Either way, it is a great way to practice Stoic philosophy daily. It's going to give you some quotes, some contextualization that are directly relatable to your job. And it's going to give you some journal prompts, some action items to help you integrate those lessons. You can subscribe if you'd like to the Stoic Responder on Substack for free. That's another way that you can support this podcast. On that page, you're going to get these podcasts delivered directly to your email 4 times a week. You're also going to get my weekly newsletters that come out 1 to 2 times a week. And that's going to have Stoic leadership and personal development tips in there. You're not going to get those anywhere else. So check that out if you get a chance. And finally, the easiest way to support this podcast is to like, share, and subscribe so that others can learn about what we are doing here. Thanks so much, folks. I got one more podcast for you tomorrow. Until next time, you are How to Roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, How to Roll.